Welcome to another episode live from the Barbican in London at Cannabis Europa. I'm your host, Shabazz Karavarani, and we have one of my closest friends in the industry, someone who is an exceptional leader. Excited to dive right in. Chris Violas, how are you, my man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good. We got lots to cover over the next 25 minutes, but first and foremost, how's the show?
Show's been incredible, actually. The energy has been out of this room. I've actually loved it. It's refreshing to go into a cannabis conference and not know anyone and not know anything about what's going on and be able to dive in with such a variety of folks. It's been absolutely fascinating. The talks have been very, very good. And so, yeah, I want more of this. I want to learn more about cannabis in Europe and how this is all going to come together.
Chris, you're the CEO of Blaze. You're helping retailers operate in Canada and the United States. You know, we just had Vlad on. Vlad's a soon-to-be happy Blaze customer. Let's talk a little bit about Europe in a second. But first, why don't you set the stage and just tell us a little bit more about Blaze and
Sure.
some of the work and some of the problems that Blaze solves for retailers
Yeah,
today.
absolutely. So give you the quick pitch here, but Blaze is a retail technology platform. We focus on point of sale, e-commerce, and payment. So today we work in pretty much all of North America in about 20 states in the US and about 9 provinces in Canada today. We focus on solving a number of problems. One is, how do we make this operation go around, generally speaking? How do we take a transaction? How do we hold inventory, manage inventory? How do we report on this? How do we run the business? And then how, in certain markets, how do we interact with any compliance systems or any other integrations or marketplaces? So we really are the brains of the store, right? Of course, we need an operator to put their great touch on it. I was giving a presentation earlier, and I was happily presenting Fika, right, and their unique approach to the store and how natural that is. But behind that store is it is the point of sale, right? It is our inventory management tool. It's handling the discounts, and as I mentioned, payments. We just launched that up in Canada, so that's been a huge initiative to be able to take credit cards and take Interac or debit cards up there and support that across the full stack. So that's what Blaze does, and we're good at it.
Isn't that wild that, in the cannabis industry, you can't, in a legal cannabis industry in North America, you can't accept credit cards and debit cards. That's so bananas.
Yes.
And Blaze came in, was able to build a solution around it, and literally allows cannabis to be sold in a marketplace like Canada, like New York, like California, whatever the case is. And so, in a nutshell, where is Blaze looking into in Europe, and what's really piqued your interest in terms of what you've learned so far on the show?
Yeah. First off, I think Europe is really early on. So we have a long road ahead of us, but it's a starting point, and I'm most curious to see how, if any, lessons learned from North America get brought and adapted here in Europe. So for me, in Blaze, at least at this moment in time, we are watching, we are learning, we're building relationships, we're meeting some great folks here, obviously, and trying to figure out, hey, is there a place for, the point of sale for, here in Europe? And I think there is eventually, but right now, heavy focus on the medicinal market. You saw that from all the conversations today. There's some great panelists, honestly. But I was just, the last one I was in was on the oversupply chain in North America. And we had some Canadian operators up there. And then the undersupply, or shortage in Germany. And so that was a really interesting conversation to see happen. But it was clear medical is the dominating talk track today. I'm not sure when and if we see more traditional adult use, more traditional retail start to happen here. You start to look at the Netherlands. So there's a great presentation this morning on the Netherlands and the coffee shops and what's going on there. I had no idea what was going on. So this was a complete intro to me, at least.
How would you summarize it? What's going on there?
It seems like it's going backwards. It's going more medicinal than it is adult use. So they're making it harder. It sounds like some of the new government that is over there is actually is against this and are starting to put forces down on it. Yet it's such an important cultural piece to the Netherlands that they still find a way to make it work, right? But it's almost, they're they make it so challenging that is it really worth it, right? And I think I'm looking forward to catching up. Simone, she's running the it's like a association out there, a retailer association, and so I'm going to catch up with her next week and really get into the nitty gritty. But it sounds like it's really challenging. Doesn't sound super optimistic, but it's such ingrained or such so deep in their culture. It's going to be hard to shift.
Yeah, so Simone is she was actually on the show as well right before you, and she was shedding a little bit of light on that. But I agree with you. It does seem like it's going a little bit, it's regressing in that aspect. Okay, so that's Netherlands. Any other countries of all the European countries that have you've learned a little bit more about today?
Yeah, Greece. No idea what was going on out there. So they're really focused on the pharmaceutical approach to cannabis, and I thought it was really interesting. There's a ton of alignment, federal government all the way down. So I'm really interested to see how that market progresses. The fact that they can also do some import-export stuff, I think that's been a really interesting, talk track here, because we aren't used to that in the United States. Yeah. Yes, there's some export in Canada. It is there, but you just hear so much of people being open to it, not having to go completely vertical or having to produce everything. So I thought that was really interesting and could be good.
With so it's clear that there's not a symbiotic nature in Europe right now. Netherlands, Greece, everyone's kind of doing something a little bit different. It's not too dissimilar from United States and Canada and provincially. And Blaze does a really good job of scaling compliance, scaling technology, scaling knowledge. How do you, as a CEO, how do you start to, first, how do you navigate all the different complexities of each different market? It's not, one market in Canada, in North America, it's 50 different markets, right? And how do you start to bring that knowledge into navigating the complexities of what the European market will be? Because it's clear it's not going to be any form of standardization.
As of right now, yes, I don't. We'll see where it ultimately ends up, but that seems like a far cry from where we're at. As far as the approach at Blaze, look, you have to. It's like any problem, right? You have to really dissect it down to what are the core pillars, and that's what we've done on the compliance angle. And we've done that in the United States, also in Canada. Obviously, we'll take that same approach to the European market. Some examples, what are those core pillars in the US? Well, there's purchase limits for consumers, whether it's medicinal or adult use. So those are pillars, whether they're set, in California, a daily limit or a transactional limit rather. Maybe in Arizona, it's a 14-day rolling period that you've got certain limits in. So there's just things like that once you have the core framework in, tweaking it on the local level isn't super hard. But we've also done so many states at this point that you could literally throw anything at us and we'd probably figure it out. But that is the approach. We really just bake it down to what are the core pillars, and then really focus on creating some flexibility around those pillars.
That's also a testament to the culture that you built internally at Blaze, being able to roll with the punches, have that structure, but also be flexible enough to battle, right? So in terms of just give the audience an understanding of like how big is the North American, because I think what I'm learning is Europeans might be struggling to see just how big this market will be.
Yes.
And so how big is, from your perspective, you get to see a lot of data. How big is the North American market in terms of dollars spent on cannabis now?
Let's have some fun. What number do you think that is? You probably are going to get pretty close, but I actually know the exact number it was in 2023.
I don't know. 700. I don't know. I'm just going to guess. 700
it's interesting because I asked this question on the panel today. So that's why I know the number. But when you start saying billions in Europe, people really start to pay attention.
Yeah.
And then when you say $38.6 billion worth of cannabis was sold in North America in 2023, it just blows people's mind.
That's a big number.
That's a huge number. So, and across that, my take is there's about 13,000 retailers across North America that are active today.
Medical and recreational.
Correct, combined. Yeah. So that's probably both those numbers.
Yeah.
But it's a huge number, and I think it's going to catch a lot of Europeans off guard because I started throwing the B word around, and people started being like, "What do you mean by that?" Yeah, it's a lot of 8s we sold. It's a lot of pre-rolls.
That's a lot of pre-rolls. Okay, so all right, so that's that's a huge number, and there's a lot of variety in that. So of that, $38.6 billion, how many brands does that distill?
I don't know. That's going to be in the thousands, right? We was, I think, on the Coffee with the Collective, right? I think Jeff was saying 400 brands, 500 maybe at this point in New York, and that's a new market.
That's a new market.
So that is crazy. But at the end of the day, it's really interesting to see, again, the European differences and the North American differences. And again, what will retail be out here? I really don't know. Are you going to see a coffee style, setup happen? It doesn't seem to have made its way to the US. We have a few lounges, right? Maybe a handful that I can think of. And of those, they're not very successful, right? It's kind of a cool thing to have, but at the end of the day, does it really move the needle on the business? No, it doesn't. Or retention? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see if Europe adopts, if they go adult use, if they adopt some of our traditional retail setups, right? Adult use. I don't know, right? Are you going to continue to see this pharmacy setup?
Let's hypothetically say they do adopt an adult use retail type play. Obviously, there's going to be, there's clinics everywhere and things
Sure.
like that, but there's, the hope is that there's going to be some sort of recreational and adult use. What are the best retail operators in your opinion? Like, what kind of qualities do they possess?
Oh, God. Focus.
Yeah.
First off, you can't do everything. And so if you're going to do retail, do it well. Second, they have a really strong identity. They know exactly who they are, right? And because of that, they've carved their own lane out, both on the customer experience side, obviously on the reputation side as a vendor, as a business someone wants to work with, partnerships, whole nine yards. So again, have a core identity that'll shape everything. And then you have to be good at executing. I mean, this is not a high margin business, so if there's not a lot of room for error. So you got to be able to execute. Those that have been successful, they understand that tech is to be weaponized, data is to be weaponized, and it's not a second, or an afterthought rather in the business. So again, those are some of our best operators. They call me weekly, and we talk a lot about problems, and that's because this industry is just evolving so fast in every market, frankly. And so tech hasn't always caught up, and so we're doing our best to stay on it, stay on top of this, right, and be a partner, not just a provider for our customers at least.
Yeah, and you've been in the, and I don't want to go too back into your history, but you've been in the trenches, right?
Let's go.
Like you were an operator, right? And that's how you built Blaze, right?
That's right. Yeah. So 2000, since we got some time here, so 2010, decided, hey, I was done with D1 soccer at that point. I broke my wrist. I was a goalkeeper, and just said, I'm going to focus on business. I want to make some money. Like that was the thought. And so came home, saw my dad. He's been a campus attorney for a long, long time. I was like, take me to work day. Like I'm on break. I got a broken hand. Take me somewhere.
Yeah.
So we went to a couple of his customers or his clients in Long Beach, and just to watch retail at that level back in 2010 was wild. And I said, I want to do this. So I wrote a business plan that summer, gave it to my dad. We went 50-50 on the business and launched that thing. And I was a junior in college at the time. So I was like trying to manage my schedule, manage the drivers. We were a delivery-based business. It was challenging. I didn't know what was going on. I got stories that I can't wait to tell Vlad on his podcast. But I got long stories of fun, long nights of delivering cannabis, across the central coast of California, which is where I was at. So sold that business finally in 2014. So I had my cannabis operations experience pretty early on, and I realized this is back then was the Wild West. It still is to some extent today, but there was just not enough for me, at least, running a business, putting my whole life into the retail side. There wasn't enough structure to scale this thing. So that's when I looked at tech, and I was like, let's go solve the tech problems. I knew there were so many problems to go solve.
I think the biggest thing there too is that there's a lot of tech companies I know firsthand that are coming out in a new market and will try and launch and will try and provide the right solutions and things of that nature. But if they haven't been there, done that, it becomes very, very challenging to actually scale and grow. So let's take Blaze out of the equation. Let's talk objectively for a second. If you're a growing operator or someone thinking about getting into being an operator, let's hypothetically say it's either adult use, it's a clinic. How do you start to coach these operators on how to evaluate technology, because there's a zillion options when it comes to technology, and there's going to be a lot of upstarts in these new markets, and there's going to be a Greek startup, there's going to be a Dutch startup, there's going to be a Spanish startup,
Sure.
and so there's going to be a lot of options available immediately. And you're coming from the North American market with a lot of trade secrets and a lot of benchmarks. But moving that for a second, just purely talking about how you evaluate a technology stack, like what does that look like?
Yeah, like if I were to put myself in their shoes today, and let's say I was going to open up, I don't know, adult use is now a thing called in France. I don't know, just making a hypothetical.
France isn't one I've heard today.
No, it's not. But let's just say, what I would look at is, let's say I wanted to be 20 stores. I wanted to be some brand, like some big retailer, right? At the end of the day, you have to, as a CEO of a company, you have to really look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, am I doing everything I can to protect shareholder value and protect this company? Mm-hmm. And the reality is, when you start moving serious quantities and having serious revenues, right, serious quantities of cannabis around, and serious revenues, like you're putting that at risk if you don't thoroughly know and really know in your heart that this vendor, this provider is literally my business partner. They are hand in hand with me on this journey. And if they can't keep up with me because of limitations on capital, because of limitations on technology or whatever it may be, that's a problem. That's going to limit me, right? So I start to think of, if I'm an operator, like who's moving faster than me right now, mm-hmm. and who can keep up with me, and that's how I look at tech. And then the second thing I fall back on, obviously, is the experience, right? And a lot of that's going to come from to be ahead, right? You have to have all that knowledge, the experience, all that stuff. So that's how I look at it. And then obviously security, right? And in particular for the EU, I mean, this is they protect their privacy mm-hmm. seriously, and so I think you need to look for someone that has some understanding of how different IT regulations, software regulations, like change per market, because that's not necessarily super easy to handle and traverse. But yeah, at the end of the day, experience wins 10 times out of 10. And so I would just say I would look for something that could fit my store, that could fit my flow, and wouldn't limit me, and it's going to keep up with me.
Cool. I got one more question on just the business itself, and then I want to turn it more into a personal question and about consumption a little bit as an athlete. So Blaze has been around for 4 years?
No, let's see.
5 years.
I say we really went live in 2019. We had some beta customers.
So 5 years?
Yeah, about 5 years, yeah.
And how many employees does Blaze have now?
We're just under 80 right now.
You have scaled very efficiently. You've raised some capital, right? You haven't you didn't try and overraise, right, when markets were frothy. What would be your advice on just building a you mentioned it kind of earlier with that focus aspect on the retail front, but like building a company in today's cannabis industry is very, very challenging.
Sure.
You can't raise at the same rates. Capital is very expensive. Building teams is hard, right? Finding good people. Yep. What's your advice on building a sustainable, profit-driven company? You've done it in 4 years. Most companies have been around for a lot longer than that, haven't been able to do that. So how did you do that, first of all, and what's your advice for these companies?
Big question.
Ambiguous too.
Yeah, no. Look, I wish we would have been to the point we're at now faster, but at the end of the day, we're here, right? And it comes through a lot of just tenacity and just like this unrelentless will to give up. Obviously, you have to build great teams and talent. I think what lacks in at least this vertical and tech is empathy and really leading. A lot of people don't lead on the ground, right? They lead from up top. And I think that is something that has really helped us get ahead, is like I'm on the ground every day, like with our team.
You are. I've seen it firsthand.
Across every single department. I'm not saying other CEOs don't do that, but to be able to do that and grow the company, keep it moving in the right direction, I think is hard, and we just don't see enough of that today. So I frankly would love to see more leadership in this industry. That would just be a huge North Star, a bright star for us, because that ultimately trickles down to the talent, right? That ultimately trickles down to everything else behind it. But at the end of the day, besides that, we're just extremely focused on what we do. We started Blaze off with actually 3 products. Like we had a cultivation product, we had a processing product. We got rid of those just to really focus on retail and be best in class. And that's when we did the Greenland acquisition. That's when we did the Timber acquisition. And that's when we're starting to really get some momentum behind us. So yeah, I think that's been a huge has been a huge reason for our success. And then the partnerships we've had. Like we just dropped a major partnership announcement today. Actually, this isn't even live right now. Might not be live, but
PST time is 8 hours behind.
8 hours, yeah. So we might have a press release going on right now with Weed Maps. We just launched. I guess I'll drop it here first.
You heard it here first.
We've been working with them on a global catalog to
sure.
really have full offering when you go to load up your catalog of pictures, descriptions, all this stuff coming from the brand, verified by them. They put it up. So there's just no ambiguity when it comes to that. It creates a better shopping experience, better SEO. There's data normalization is a big thing, so that helps with that. This launch helps with that. So it's just there's all these things that we've done over time to build this company, and it's been challenging, but we're here.
Congratulations. I know firsthand how challenging that is, and that's a whole host of other challenges, which is like a content management system to manage the menu. So
yeah,
bravo. That's a real solution that they just dropped. I'd highly recommend everyone checking out that press release. Last question for you is, you're an athlete. You were a D1 soccer player.
Yeah.
I've personally seen you regimented in your early morning workouts and your grind mentality. You're also a cannabis consumer, I believe.
Yep.
Right? What is the future of cannabis, wellness, athletics, recovery? What does that look like? Because I know we share that, and we're very passionate about that.
You know what? As I think that is a great angle to attack the stigmatism around cannabis, frankly, is athletes, right? Because so many people look up to athletes as leaders, as someone to admire and work towards. So I think there's been some good strides, but at the end of the day, if we get some movement on Schedule 3, I think you're going to see the MLS. I think you're going to start to see a lot of other, because I know NBA has started to make some progress, MLB, right? NFL, but like really make some headwind there. Because at that, I think there is a place for cannabis in an athlete's life, especially for recovery, especially on some creams or whatever it may be. There's a lot of different recovery, sleep, all these things. Like athletes, some of them have great sleep, but I've also met some that don't.
Second time Pat Cash was on earlier talking about sleep.
So like all these, then that's half the battle, right? You can work out as hard as you want, but if you don't rest, like good luck, it's not going to do anything. So I think there's a place for it. I think we need some federal movement. I think the US can lead this by far. At the same time, we have to be very careful, right? Because we have kids that really look up to these folks. So I think there's a place for it. It's just, I don't know how it's going to all shape out. But I think if you start letting athletes experiment a little bit more, they're going to understand what works best for them. And we're going to start to have more data to look at this and say, okay, is it really helping? I think it is, personally.
Me too.
But then again, like, do you go to market with it, right? Do you go call that out? I don't know. I think we got a responsibility to our youth to keep cannabis, at a safe distance for quite some time until you're in the adult world. There's tons of studies that say it's not good for you. Up into that, it can definitely, it can hurt your development. So I think at the end of the day, right place, right time. But I certainly enjoy it. I use it to help go to sleep. It's a stress reliever for me. I usually consume at night, and so that's. Yeah, and edibles too.
Yeah, fair enough. I like to consume right before a long run, so.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we're gonna have to try that one.
Yeah, no, I definitely like to do that as well. I don't get to do it very often, but when I do, it's super fun. So it makes it a little bit more interesting.
It's tough at 5:30 in the morning.
I don't do that at 5:30 in the morning.
Awesome, Chris. Where can people in the audience find you? How can they, get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, just obviously my name, Chris Violas. I'm on Instagram, same thing, Chris Violas. You can go ahead and shoot me an email if you want, chris@blaze.me, or just go to the website and fill a questionnaire form out. The guys will get it to me. Cool. And we'll get in touch.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Lots of good golden nuggets here, and don't hesitate to reach out to Chris if you have any questions specifically around technology, scaling companies, and being a good leader. Appreciate you, man.
All right, man. Thank you.
Cheers.